great pleasure to be here. And I'm very proud to follow Amos because by coincidence, I am an investor in his company. And I think, as you will see from my comments, his company is positioned exactly where the future of business lies. So you asked me, Marco, to talk about where is the world heading. Many of you will know that I made my career in venture capital and private equity. I was also an entrepreneur because I co-founded Apex Partners, which became a very large investment house, today managing more than $60 billion across the world. Well, when I got into venture capital in the at the end of the 60s, mid 70s, the world of entrepreneurship was brand new. People didn't understand it, and very few people could spell the word for that matter. Venture capital funds, when I started, were about $2.5 million each. You compare it with the billions today that some funds are raising, and you can see the progress. And I got into venture capital and then private equity because I sensed that the combination of technology and entrepreneurship was going to change the world. At that time, a lot of people thought that the invention of the microchip was simply going to affect the computer industry. They didn't see the cellular phone, they didn't see the internet. Many of us couldn't see it that clearly, but felt that, look, this is going to be a much bigger wave. So there was a wave of technology and a wave of entrepreneurship and the creation of venture capital and actually the management of risk, which created the background for the tech revolution that we've all seen and many of us have played a role in and are playing a role in. Now, what is happening today feels to me very much like what happened then. I see today three major forces coming together to power another revolution, which I call the impact revolution. The first of these forces is the change in values, which the panel ahead of Amos referred to. It's true, there's a massive change in values as of the last 15 years or so. Many young people have refused to work for companies that are creating harm, are refusing to purchase their products. This has become noticed by a much wider population. And so investors have begun to pay attention to it. And today, this change in values is leading to $40 trillion or so, trillion of ESG, environmental, social, and governance investment, which aims to achieve impact as well as profit, very much in the way that Amos was talking about reducing carbon emissions while making money. That $40 trillion today is flowing to public companies, to private companies, to the bond market. Would you believe that this year, $1 trillion will have been raised in sustainability-linked bonds and loans, about 900 billion of loans from banks and 100 billion of bonds, which have been raised by companies from institutional investors, where the rate of interest actually falls if certain environmental or social objectives have been achieved. So the thinking around impact has come to the mainstream now. And the way I describe it in my book, Impact, which you can see the cover over my shoulder, is that our economic system is now shifting from optimizing risk return to optimizing risk return and impact. And the companies that are creating harm, like ExxonMobil, are being targeted at shareholders' meetings. They're having directors kicked off the board. They're having directors imposed on them. Companies like Shell have had lawsuits ordering them to reduce their carbon emissions by 40% before the end of the year, and so on. And then you see companies like Tesla coming along, and while ExxonMobil's share price has gone down by 2/3 over a period of 3 years, you see the price of Tesla multiplying 7 times in 1 year alone. So massive change in values. The second is the huge leaps in technology, which NOAH and all of you tech entrepreneurs are all about. I don't need to explain to you that artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, the genome and computing coming together, many other technologies converging, enable us today to deliver impact in ways humanity could never have contemplated before. You see it in new models for companies bringing remote education, where you pay for your education once you've been educated at university and got into a job. You see it in telehealth, you see it in clean energy, and so on. So we have impact and technology coming together now in the way that Tesla has shown to disrupt industries again, fundamentally, reshaping them, shifting them, as you can see with the automobile industry, from the combustion engine to electric vehicles, and in the process building a company which is worth $1 trillion today. The third force, which gives you a sense of the destination that we're all heading to, is that this technology enables us to measure the impacts of companies in ways we previously couldn't do. And I'm involved with an initiative at Harvard Business School, the Impact Weighted Accounts Initiative, which is publishing thousands of companies' impacts in monetary terms. And I want to give you a peep into the future. Let's take environmental impact first. We've published 3,000 companies' environmental impact in monetary terms. These 3,000 companies create $4 trillion of environmental damage in a single year. Of these, 450 companies create more damage than profit in a year. 1,000 create damage equivalent to a quarter of their profit, forgive me, which means that 2/3 create damage of less than 2/3 of their profit, and therefore should be able to transition to net zero quicker than their competitors. So the combination of these three forces is leading to a massive revolution, which is going to see once again a rejigging of winners and losers. If you're running a venture today, begin to focus on the impacts you're creating. Begin to manage them. It's the way for you to attract talent, to attract consumers, and to attract investors. When you begin to manage your impacts, you will begin to realize that optimizing risk, return, and impact brings you to new opportunities, as well as reducing the risk of regulation or taxation that you face. And as you begin to focus on impact, you begin to realize that it drives you to help the largest populations to define business models that address the needs of the most vulnerable. But that also means the largest markets. And so if you look at a tech company like Orcam, which I mentioned in my book, which invented spectacles to help the blind to see, as it were, spectacles which enable a blind person to have whispered in their ear the page of the book they're holding or the envelope in their hand, or which recognize the person that walks into the room, which has previously been inputted, you would say that's a fantastic impact venture. It can help 35 million blind people, 250 million visually impaired people. But if you think as an impact entrepreneur, you ask yourself the question, how can my technology help the greatest number of people in the planet? How can I become a unicorn that isn't just worth $1 billion, but helps improve the lives of 1 billion people, an impact unicorn? And the answer is a surprising one. What if you made these spectacles available to the 800 million illiterate adults in the world? What would that do for their lives, their livelihoods, and for the global economy? And so all of a sudden, you've defined a market of 1.1 billion people. And your business model changes as a result of that. Your price level, the type of device that you make available, and so on and so forth. So optimizing risk, return, and impact not only improves the risk of your venture, because if you're polluting, you will be regulated or taxed. You will have difficulty in attracting talent, and so on and so forth. It also opens the door to new markets and new investment opportunities. I have the same feeling today about this impact revolution that I had about the tech revolution 40 years ago. And so I wish you all well in your ventures and urge you to deliver both impact and profit at the same time.
I'm always surprised how you put these very complex circumstances in very simple words. I guess it's practice. But allow me one question. Why at COP no one confronts the status quo? Why is everyone playing along? No one is raising their hands and calling out injustice. Is the world so unjust that nobody needs to call it out anymore?
No, Marco, the reason is that at COP, you had governments talking to each other about the way forward. And they've been doing that for 4 decades. And governments aren't the ones who are creating the huge pollution or the social issue. It's businesses that are doing that, funded by investors. And so what impact investment recognizes is that you, as an investor, have the ability to change the behavior of companies. If you begin to look, as the 40 trillion of ESG money is doing, for businesses that are creating less harm or bringing solutions to our problems, what do? And it shows in the Harvard data. You change the value of companies. You can see in the Harvard data that within the same sector, the companies that pollute more are worth less on the stock exchange. And so we have to start now with investors and consumers and talent changing the behavior of companies. There are some leaders of companies who want to lead in that direction, but many businesses view it as an additional hassle at a time when they could do without additional hassles. And so what we need is governments to bring this transparency on impact that I was talking about, Marco, because transparency shines a spotlight on performance. And no one wants to be the dirtiest company on the block or the one using the worst labor practices, right?
Wilma, a palm oil company, doesn't really care too much about it. I love this discussion, and I would really like to continue it, because at NOAH we bring transparency, so maybe they stop talking forward and stop going backwards, because one thing is for sure, whatever they're doing, it's not working, right? And we have to go different ways. And maybe it has to be politically incorrect, but it is what's needed. Thank you so much, Ronnie. Hopefully next time in person. And I'm going to read your book over Christmas. Thank you so much.
Okay. All the best, Marco. Good luck to all of you with your ventures.
Really, thank you.
Thanks.